Give an apology in advance because unfortunately I have to leave early. The timing changed somewhat since I agreed to do this, and I have another commitment, so apologies for that. I'm particularly sorry to have to leave early since it means I would leave an all-male panel behind me. As Michael has pointed out, speeches and panels and discussions on church and state tend to be rather male-dominated. I don't think that's a coincidence or in any way just a happenstance. I observed, as many of you would have done, the Oireachtas Health Committee hearings on abortion, an issue that profoundly affects women, in January. The session to which religious bodies were invited to address had a large panoply of men addressing it from different religions, 2 women, one from Atheist Ireland and one from the Methodist Church. But I know that in my absence Michael will fly the atheist and indeed the feminist flag for me. As a result of that hearing, I was widely reported as having accused Catholic bishops of women hating, when in fact what I said was that the Church's approach on the issue of abortion and on the hearings displayed a misogyny. And as anyone who looks at any dictionary definition will be aware, misogyny has a meaning not only just of women hating, but the more modern meaning is that of institutional prejudice, institutional gender bias. And that's what I meant, and I think that's self-evident in the Catholic Church hierarchy, and indeed in the hierarchies of many religions. Just to address the issue of church and state in Ireland, church versus state, I think it's no coincidence in an Irish context that we always say church versus state, and church tends to come first. And of course, when we talk about church versus state in Ireland, we speak of the Catholic Church, and again, no coincidence, because that is the church that has dominated the laws, the policies, the structures of our society and of our jurisdiction since the foundation of the state in 1922. And I argue that it's been, I don't think there's any dispute that it's dominated the structures. I also argue that the dominance has had an unhealthy effect and has created what is essentially a dysfunctional republic. And I would absolutely endorse what Michael has said. Now, Michael's focus, I suppose, was on the 1937 Constitution, and he's quite right to point out to you all the references to religion, all the instances of Catholic ethics and Catholic teaching in that. I think he didn't mention Article 41, subsection 2, which refers to women's place in the home and the duties of mothers within the home. And that we are now happily, at last, in a long overdue move, going to review that. And many of you will have seen the Constitutional Convention at the weekend voted by an overwhelming majority, almost 90%, to change the wording of that article and to recognise instead the role of carers in a gender-neutral or a gender-inclusive way. Michael also mentioned the issue of prayers. As the only card-carrying atheist member of the Oireachtas, I'm delighted to say that for the first time in the Shannon, we now have recognition that there are other faiths and other belief systems present other than Christianity, and we have, alongside the Christian prayer that commences the proceedings, we also have a 30-second silence in recognition of humanism, of atheism, and of non-Christian traditions, and that's hugely, would you believe, and that took a lot of work to get that in. Apart from the language of the Constitution, what has the influence and the dominance of Catholic teaching in our society meant? Well, just to take 3 obvious examples. In our healthcare system, in our welfare system, and in our education system, we've seen Catholic teaching work to the detriment, in particular, of women and of children. And I know in the earlier session you heard about the education system, and Paul Rowe would have spoken about the faith basis on which our education system is premised. The fact that out of over 3,200 national schools in Ireland, only 65 are run by multi-denominational bodies. As a parent myself, I'm hugely supportive of the Educate Together movement and the change in the system. But I think, just to finish on the health and welfare systems, thanks Ruth, the Catholic Church functioned throughout most of the history of our state as a shadow welfare state, and we see very clearly today, and I suppose I need to refer to this in conclusion, the enormously detrimental effect that had not only on generations of children who were abused in industrial schools run by religious orders when the state negated its responsibility to those children and put them in there, but also, as we now know, through the abuse of, again, thousands of women placed in Magdalene laundries against their will or forced to enter there as a result of a dominant Catholic morality. And any of you who saw the Taoiseach's very moving apology to the women last night, at last, long last, on behalf of the state, and who heard the Taoiseach's words where he spoke of the dominant theocratic ideology that caused those institutions to function for 74 years. Up until 1996, women were incarcerated in Magdalene laundries in Ireland. If we need no other evidence of the unhealthy and dysfunctional dominance the Catholic Church has had on our state over the decades since its formation, I would say that is the only evidence one needs. Thank you very much.